I never super duper got into the older style of metal, which feels strange to say since it has some of the best stories to tell. Case in point is today's episode, where I'll be focusing on the album Them by the band King Diamond. The album is the band's third, and it was released in 1988, so almost 30 years ago. Well, just about now. The main story of it is, well, that's what we're here to crack. Fair warning though, it might get a little bit spoopy. Ooh. Anyway, yeah, I want to thank my friend Sai on Discord for suggesting it, even though when he suggested it, it was May in 2017. So I'm really sorry for the long delay, but still, I hope that you all enjoy it. Now, let me tell you a story. We start with the first song we have from the Asylum. To be honest, it's not even technically a song, but it plays more like a skit. It starts with an eerie atmosphere and a clunky piano is being played by King himself, as he, his mother, and his sister Missy wait for their grandmother to return from a mental asylum. A bunch of creepy voices are heard in King's head, and they're pretty much the main characters of the album in a way. The grandmother is welcomed back into the home, and the mother tells Missy to be kind and tells King to stop playing the piano, which itself sounds like a very classical horror music sting. Sort of like the familiar strings from Psycho in a way, but taken up to another notch because I consider pianos to be more soothing instruments naturally compared to violins. So to play such a creepy piano beat in such a way that gives us an unsettling intro, it really works well. It even pops up again at certain points in the album, and all in all, it's a good introduction. It sets the tone well for what we get in the album. It's just creepy and gets under your skin, and that's what good horror does, so claim the non-horror fan, which is me. We then reach the second track and the first proper song in Welcome Home. It follows well from the previous song, and it details King meeting his grandmother outside the house, pretty much being at the front door with her. King comments on how much he and the family have missed their grandmother and helps her around the house, sharing the changes it's been through since she was last there, where her new room is in the attic, and so on and so forth. As he attempts to reintroduce her to Missy and the mother, he realizes that she's not speaking, so he asks her how the holiday was, to which she replies that it would have been worse if not for them. One thing I love is how King Diamond himself uses his high vocals for King's parts, but uses more guttural, growling vocals for the grandmother, so when King asks who they are, and the grandmother says not to mind and insults him, it feels really unique in that way. It ends with King bringing the grandmother further inside the house, with the old woman asking if King can feel their presence, and as we've gone over, that is possible. This is just a really good song, bolstered by solid instrumental work with some awesome shredding guitar solos, and the vocals to help differentiate the characters didn't go unnoticed, and we get a good story laid out, just adding to the foreboding sense of the album and all the horror within. Next is the third song, The Invisible Guests. Once again, it follows from the previous song and seems to take place not long after Grandma has been settled into the house. The fact that the song starts with King claiming they woke up in the middle of the night is a good testament to this, and the cause of him waking up was the voices of them and Grandma. So, in the story of this song, he goes to check on Grandma's room, peeping through the keyhole to see her talking to nobody, although he does hear the voices of them. He even witnesses cups floating into the air and emptying themselves, but after that, Grandma opens the door and catches King spying on her. She invites him into her room and gives him a warning to forget what he saw and heard, but not without bribing him with his secrets, claiming that the house is called the House of Amon, implying that it belongs to some evil spirit of some sort. She then tells King to go back to sleep, which he does, but only to wake up in Grandma's chair, strangely. For a song with a simpler plot than others, it does make up for it in the creepy way that the story is told, as well as the solid instrumental work and musicianship. The delivery of the Grandma's warning is especially chilling, and is once again just creepy and a good chilling style of horror, which, once again, non-horror fan, I like it. Next is song number 4, titled Tea. In contrast to previous songs which followed a much more fast-paced structure, this one starts off with a more melodious feeling to it, and it sets a creepier vibe than the heavier stuff does. To be fair, the different pacing works well, as this part focuses on King the following Friday after the events of the Invisible Guests, where Grandma offers to show King about the House of Amon. Mother is sleeping in Grandma's rocking chair, and at first King is afraid of what will happen next, but then he stopped, which I believe is where the heavy part kicks in with an amazing guitar solo. The song is the longest on the album as well, at 5 minutes and 17 seconds, and the pacing has much to do with that, tying well to the story. Speaking of which, Grandma takes a knife from her dress and cuts Mother's hand, forcing some blood to drip down into the teapot that she was carrying, and Grandma explains that the blood is what allows people to hear them. So King drinks the tea and starts to hear and see them, and they start to tell him stories which he falls into. He becomes addicted to it and learns that they aren't so bad after all, even going so far as to pretend that Mother didn't exist, and believing that it was just a dream that he was even talking to them. This song is just so well handled, and it's got the right balance of such a mastery of tone to it as well, with amazing instrumental work to boot, and King Diamond's choice to take a high vocal route paying off wonders. Once hang on, that was bad. We then reach the song Mother's Getting Weaker. Once again, it contrasts previous songs, this time by being more instrumental, but also more fast-paced than Tears. This song doesn't seem to have a straightforward chorus either, which does actually add some punch to it, as the parts between verses are mostly guitar solos. Anyway, the story that this song tells is mostly from King's point of view, and there's no appearance from Grandma or them either. It tells the story of that night being the last that they'd have their tea, or at least that King didn't want any more. But because that tea is spiced up by King's mother's blood, said mother gets weaker and paler with each tea time. By the morning after, she's stuck in bed, barely moving or speaking, pretty much comatose by that point. But the truly scary horror part of this is King's complete lack of regard for it. There's a point where he wants to leave, but Missy grabs his hand and begs him to stay. She even hands King the phone to call for help, but King cuts the wire and leaves Mother and Missy. As he walks away, Missy says that she hates him. There's not much to talk about with the song, but the disinterest that King shows on his own is honestly really creepy, and it keeps the tone quite consistent as well. Next, we move on to Bye Bye Missy. Even though the songs don't really have a specified timeline, they do seem to take place after each other, and this one is no different. In the previous song, King refuses to help as their mother dies, and Missy claims that she hates him. This is maybe the darkest song on the record, and I'll explain why. It starts with them having tea again, and even though most of their mother's blood is gone, she's still walking, but almost swaying, and she sits in Grandma's chair, and King already knows that it was them that took part in this. Missy would later knock the door in tears and angry at King for what he did in the previous song, but before she could do too much, Grandma appears and restrains Missy. Missy tries to escape, but Grandma claims that she's too young and decides to use them to help. She pushes Missy down some stairs, and the spirits of the Heirs of Aemon are the ones that kill Missy, presumably by burning her in the kitchen's fireplace, almost like Grandma is now fully controlling them. This song is so creepy and dark, and it's difficult to listen to, especially with more references to Aemon and the tea, and it's paced tremendously well. It's a good show don't tell song, as we never actually see or rather hear Missy get burned, but it's assumed that we do, and a lot of this album is open to interpretation at the end of the day. But anyway, the song is just a fantastic piece that carries on the story and adds on to the album's already unsettling feeling. We next reach The Accusation Chair. Once again, the songs don't have a timeline, but this does seem to take place after what happens to Missy. This one actually has some sort of redemption theme going for it, as King goes to see Grandma in a room where she waits for him. She asks him how he is, he lies and says he's okay, and she believes him. She then asks to go outside, and that he takes her out there, and they do. This is pretty much King's chance to strike back for everything bad that Grandma did, since she wasn't protected by them in the house. She even asks to stay outside for a bit longer, so King allows it before trying to grab at her cane. And he successfully does so, telling her that she will pay for her deeds, and she actually does. After King steals her cane, he basically takes away Grandma's source of power, and she actually dies. King then feels the voices of them creeping up on him, telling them to stop tormenting him before they return to the house. After Grandma dies, they expect King to return home, but instead runs into the woods, hallucinating and hearing their voices and seeing them, and well, even dreaming that he was one of them before fainting in the forest. The song doesn't have the heaviest instrumentation, but the focus on unsettling storytelling is apparent more so here, as King finally starts admitting to his insanity, and it also sets up the album's finale well. It's a cleverly and creepily constructed piece that adds a little bit of a twist as well, and I really don't hate it. It's really good. We next reach the title track, Them. In case you didn't know what a title track was, it's not like I've talked about them before for a long time or anything. Anyway, Them is an instrumental piece just under 2 minutes, and even though it is mostly instrumental, there are whispers of musical stings throughout. In fact, the only lyrics are as follows, and are spoken by them in King's head. King, come out to us. King, remember the tea. We are stronger than you must return. And for a song that's only 2 minutes long and plays one slightly changed and slowed down scale riff throughout, it's still a really good story. It's almost as if King has fallen completely into his sanity rather than just embracing it in the previous song. I don't have as much to say here given the short length of the song, but the violin sting near the end followed by them laughing at King, almost like they know he'll come back. The song then ends with what sounds like a music box, and it just makes things sound creepier. A short track with no words, well, very few, but a good little story for as long as it lasts. Next is the last proper song of the album, in Twilight Symphony. It essentially ends after The Accusation Chair, and it seems like the title track of the album takes place in King's head after he faints. Anyway, the song begins with King waking up the next morning and being found by police and ambulance staff, and we also meet the last sort of character of the album named Dr. Landau. Landau asks King what happened, and after recounting the story exactly as it happened during the course of the album, mostly because all the evidence was already there and King knew that they wouldn't believe him if he denied anything. So after telling the truth, Landau deems King's insane because he is, and the police take King away to the nut house, essentially. But then something weird happens, and it seems as though King is back on the outside again, and the first thing he does is choose to go back to Grandma's house. And that adds a twist of sorts to the album, as it seems as though King has possibly been released from prison, and his mother is still alive after the events. This song is awesome, and it ties up everything really well together as the last actual song, but not the last track. Great work, storytelling, a surprising but welcome twist in the prison angle. I don't dislike anything about it, it's just really, really good work. And finally, we reach the last track in Coming Home. The shortest track at 1 minute and 11 seconds, it sees King return to the house of Amon, with the spirits of his grandmother having seen him coming and invited him in for tea, where Missy is there too on their dead grandfather's lap. However, that's technically it for the song, and there is somewhat of a letter afterwards which I'd like to read for you now. To whom it may concern, I am scared to death. 9 years ago they finally let me out, and I was just beginning to feel better. I am not myself any longer. I guess you could not even recognize my face if you saw me now. That phone call 2 hours ago has torn me apart. It was Grandma. She invited me back to the old house. I do not want to go back, but I must. You will understand my fear if I tell you what happened during my childhood. 18 years ago, I was living with my mother and my sister Missy in Grandma's old house. I had been told that Grandma was away on a long vacation and that she would soon return. She did. I have later found out that she was actually being released from that same asylum. She's insane, they said, when she kept on babbling about them. I still cannot make up my mind about who really did separate Grandpa's head from his shoulders. You see, they were always so nice to me. Anyway, time is short, and I must leave for the old house. So here is what happened 18 years ago. And in case we never see each other again, at least you will know why. I bet we're going to have tea. So, as you can see at the end, it's almost as if this takes place before the end of Twilight Symphony, which begs the question of why this song wasn't before that one. Well, I have a little bit of a theory, which is that it adds to the twist at the end of Twilight Symphony and really keeps the secret of both King and Grandma being released from the same asylum, although Grandma's was when King was a kid during the course of an album, and King's departure is stated 18 years after the events of the album. It's a good story mechanic, and while it can confuse some people, it's not the worst thing, honestly. And once again, it just adds to the story and caps things off really, really well. All in all, Them is a well-constructed horror movie of an album, settling mostly for the creeping type of horror over the blood, gore, and sex type that was just then gaining ground in the late 80s. Unlike with my episodes about the House of Gold and Bones albums, there isn't really a lesson to be learned here, so there's not anything that I can relay except for don't listen to the voices in your head that tell you to do bad things. But that would be pointless to say because that is what King winds up doing. But with this story this dark and creepy and chilling, you don't really need a moral lesson. The characters are all interesting, but my favourite is the grandmother, and King Diamond himself seems to have so much fun tapping into a gravelly tone to convey that malicious intent behind all of her actions. King is a good reluctant character, not necessarily a hero, but a flawed child who is more susceptible to what they would tell him to do. Missy and Mother are both good characters as well, as is Dr. Landau despite how late we get him. And obviously the voices of them are just utter brilliance. The choice to have them sound like a cacophony of madness by having multiple band members sing those lines together really paid off, and it sells the uneasy, threatening feeling of them. Combining these characters, this story, and the overall horror concept pays off well, sending a shiver through one's spine thanks to the tone and delivery of what's being sung. In the end, it all combines together well, and it's a creepy, spooky, and very satisfying listen if you can get through it. Hats off to you, King Diamond, for releasing a classic that, 30 years on, holds up as both a great metal album and a great horror movie meshed together effortlessly. So, that's it for the episode. That's it for Order Concepts. I'd very much like to do the follow-up album that they did to them called Conspiracy, because that is a sequel. That'll probably come about sometime next year. I've got a couple of other things planned. Tomorrow is the next Ultra Fire episode review. I think it's the last episode of the season before the live finale next weekend, I think. Then there's another UFC Fight of the Night review to come soon, and not long after that is going to be my favourite albums of 2018, because there's really not a lot else that I can think of I'm looking forward to except for one album in December. That's it. I might as well wait until that album's out and listen to that. But besides that, my list is pretty much done. Sorry, but yeah, more stuff to come. I had a lot of fun writing this. I wish I wrote these more frequently, but I think it would take away from them a little bit, you know? But yeah, I do enjoy doing them, and as always, if you have like a concept album you want me to go over and just look at and talk about, then tell me. And as always, if you've got suggestions for backtracking, I'm happy to do those. And I'll see you all tomorrow for the next video, and not long after that for future videos. As always, thank you for watching. You're awesome. Bye-bye.